You're listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast, the show with a light-hearted look at the eventing world, all of the big event previews, reviews, and special guests, and of course, backed up with all of the key Echo Rating stats. Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast. Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast and a review show because it was the European Championships this last weekend. And what a weekend it was. Tickets to Tokyo on offer. Damn, I missed you in the build up to the Europeans. What a week to choose to go on holiday.
Yeah, don't ever do that again to us, Nicole. It was awful without you. I mean, we struggled along. We got through it. But yeah, no, I think it's the other way around. We missed you.
I was really sad, but I kept up with everything that I could in deepest, darkest Devon, making my cups of tea on the back of the truck. You know how I liked holiday. And I thought you all did an amazing job. And I loved all of the Echo Rating stuff through the event. So yeah, I imagine you're absolutely shattered. So hats off to you because yeah, brilliant job by the entire team. And of course, one half of Echo Ratings was out in Le Moulin, and Sam heartbreak a little bit on the cross country, 20 penalties with Tullabeg Flamenco, but the horse absolutely looked $1 million on the final day, jumped to clear round. So he finished just inside the top 40, I think. Sorry, Sam.
Fine lines at the very top, Nicole. He'd be pleased
tough,
with his first phase. He'd be pleased enough, I'd say, with his final phase. But yeah, look, hopefully we'll get him on the pod in a little bit if he can drag himself onto the podcast. I haven't cleared that with him yet, but we might be able to get him on. But yeah, very fine lines at the top of the sport. And look, it wasn't just Sam.
Tina Cook would also be feeling a little bit aggrieved of a potential individual medal.
Well, yeah, Laura. Disappointment piece, Nicole. The one person I would say that I would really feel for, because there's always someone else worse off, and that's not even including the people who, Kieran Lynn unfortunately had to withdraw, having had that brilliant round cross country on Saturday. So there'll be that side of the disappointment. But I would say the biggest had to be Thibaut Villette, King de Brio. Like, that looks like one of the most expensive rails that we've seen in a long time.
Well, a rail cost him an individual medal, and it cost France a team medal as well, didn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, I would say, for all of the disappointment, I would say that has to be one of the biggest ones. But yeah, very, very fine lines at the top.
Can I just make a point on King de Brio, though? Thibaut Villette. Now, this horse has obviously won an individual bronze medal at the Europeans at Blair in 2015. Since then, has been to every major championship. I think his worst result was 13th individually, and that was at the Rio Olympic Games when they won Team Gold, and he was part of that team that won Team Gold. But he, in every other occasion, so 3 other occasions, has been inside of the top 10 individually. He's never been worse than 13th from 4 appearances. He is the ultimate team horse. Like, if you are going to a championship, that's the kind of combination that you want. And Thibaut Villette has really, before that horse, had very little international exposure. So I don't think, he still finished, what was he, eventual 5th place? Yes, the pole cost him, but still hats off to him.
Show jump clearing most of them as well. He had a rail at WEG, but I think, he's had... Yeah, he was clearing nearly at every other championship. I think, 2 other Europeans and an Olympics, all clear.
Yeah. He's an incredible jumper, and he has the most remarkable record. So top 5 finish, yes, disappointing not to get a medal and very expensive, but as a championship horse, King de Brio is massively underrated in my opinion. Can I take this moment before we've got a special podcast for you listeners, because we've caught up with a couple of people who were front and center of all of the happenings this weekend, and we're going to bring those to you as part of a special compilation. So just before we go on to that, I'm just going to take this moment to say, damn, happy Hail Bob Day.
Oh, yes. Thank God. Thank you, Nicole. It is a happy Hail Bob Day. It's a hard one. I mean, I was doing like the live stuff as it was going through, and I guess it's nicer when you're celebrating someone winning, not off the back of someone else having a rail. But the fan side, the passion side comes through, and look, you win however you want to win. I don't think Team GB fans were crying that it was Ingrid who knocked her rail and not Roz winning from the front when it came to WEG. The tables turned this time, not necessarily on Team GB, but for Ingrid. She jumped her clear round and Michael had his pull down. So we have the same 1-2 as we had at Stragom. Ingrid and Michael. And actually, looking at European 1-2s, that is, I think it is now 6 Europeans in a row, which have been a German 1-2. So,
no way.
I'm pretty sure it has. Yeah, let me just have a look. Well, I was looking at it there last night. I haven't put
6
it out there.
Europeans. Well, that would take us back to from Lumoulin 2011. I can imagine it to be true. So 2011, 13, 15, 17, 19. So maybe 5 in a row. Sorry.
Yeah. Maybe let me just confirm.
That would be because I know Tina won obviously in 2009, but from 2011 that would have been an incredible achievement.
11 on. Yeah, 11 was
Good
Michael.
God.
Michael first, then Sandra. 13 was Michael, then Ingrid. 15 was Michael and Sandra. 17 was Ingrid, Michael, and then 19 was Ingrid, Michael.
Good grief, that is absolutely insane.
There's only been 3 different people in the first 2 at the European Championships for the last 5 runnings of it.
Oh my word, that is actually mind blowing. Can we just touch upon the combination in third place, because Ireland got on an individual podium for, is it the 4th time ever with Cathal Daniels?
Fourth time ever, first time since Lucy Thompson on Belton Romance back at Protoni 95. So very, very big achievement.
It's just incredible. And Cathal Daniels and Rhian Roa have literally the most remarkable record. They have 2 team gold medals from juniors. They've got medals from Young Rider Days as a combination. They've got the team silver from the World Equestrian Games last year and an individual bronze this year. I think he's 22. I mean, if I think what I was doing at 22, I definitely didn't have that.
You were getting married,
I don't have that many. Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much getting married. 23, but I don't have that many medals now, but even so, it's just absolutely insane when you think he's got that much experience for such a young man. Just incredible, absolutely incredible. And Rhian Roa has been a real superstar for him over the years. Team tickets, let's talk them briefly, because there was a lot at stake. So 2 team qualifying tickets on offer for Tokyo this weekend. Now, it was Sweden and Italy would have always been the hot favourites to take them. They did so and have therefore booked their tickets to Tokyo next year, which opens up the whole Nations Cup ticket that is left. There's 1 ticket left that's available to teams through the traditional route, providing everybody else qualifies. Was that pretty much how you saw things playing out?
Yeah, there was areas where they could have been vulnerable, and it was a reasonably influential cross-country day in that part of the competition, for some of the combinations. So, I mean, the Dutch, I would have said
the Dutch started brilliantly. They should be disappointed, I think.
Not cross-country, they didn't.
No, the dressage. They were well up there after dressage, and actually they only had 1 team member who completed the competition, and that was Tim Lips and Biro.
Yeah, but the Belgians also started very well. They were pretty close to the top after Laura and Karen, 2 28.8 scores on Thursday. So yeah, the Belgians started well as well. They were always going to be a little bit more vulnerable cross country. The Italians would have been vulnerable in the show jumping phase had a team been able to put the pressure on them. That would have been the Dutch. The Swiss, you couldn't write off going in there. The Swiss still hold a lead of 15 marks over the Netherlands in that Nations Cup battle. So yeah, it all goes back down to that now. I think Belgium, Sweden, and the Netherlands go ahead to head.
No, Sweden are qualified.
Oh no, sorry. What am I saying? Belgium, Switzerland, and
Switzerland and the Netherlands. And actually, that final leg in Buccalo is on home soil for the Netherlands. So I'd like to say they would surely be favourites to take that.
Well, you see, the Vargam comes before, and
it does. They've got 2 legs left.
I just don't know if the Swiss are yet. I didn't see a team really yet going to Vargam for the Swiss. Now, surely they will have to go and chase that down now.
You would have thought so, wouldn't you?
You would. But the Belgians, let's say the Belgians went to Varagum and I think they're about 60 points back. They could easily claw that back if there wasn't a Swiss or Dutch. I imagine the Dutch would be there.
Oh, I think this is the point now. The Nations Cup, there is one ticket remaining. There's those three big teams, Belgium, Switzerland, the Netherlands. I mean, you've still got the likes of Austria, Finland, and Spain who aren't qualified, but those are the big three that you'll be looking for in that Nations Cup, and it'll be really exciting to see how it does play out.
Do you know why I think it'll be really exciting? Because
go on then.
The Dutch are a big nation, and I guess we automatically think, probably in a way that we thought potentially France maybe should have, or they were so close to the podium, but you automatically gravitate towards the big nations. The Dutch going to Buccleuch, while it could be a home advantage in one sense, it will also be a pressure cooker.
Oh, imagine the show jumping on the final day. They're jumping on home soil for a ticket to the Olympic Games.
I actually think they will be happy if they're jumping on the final day for a ticket.
Do you think?
I mean, there's plenty of work to do. There's plenty of work to do.
I would actually say on that respect that their strongest combination, Tim Lips and Biro, who have been the Dutch national champions on a few occasions and are the reigning Dutch national champions, they've been to the Europeans. They've finished individual sixth. We're at beginning of September now. They're not going to be turned around to go to Buccleuch. So, oh wow, I can't see it. I mean, I would be really surprised if Tim Lips turns Biro round to go to Buccleuch. I can't see it. It is too close, surely. It's like 5 weeks.
This is where it gets tactical and very interesting. But I just think they've got to pick themselves up off the ground now as a nation, as a team. And they've got to hopefully get something on the board at Vargem. And then, and I'm pretty sure that Buccleuch is running in the same, as the Tokyo format as well.
It is. I think it's 3 in a team in Buccleuch because they're running Olympic format. I would say Tim Lips has another very good horse in Eclipse, but it's not the caliber of Biro.
Mistake, Nicole, and you're making substitutions and all that kind of stuff.
So exciting.
I know.
Okay, so that is how things played out in terms of team tickets to Tokyo. Let's go and hear from a couple of very special guests.
Well, next up on the show, delighted to be joined by Lucinda Green and Sam Watson, both of them, I think, just home from Lemoulin. Are both of you home at this stage? Lucinda, are you back in the UK?
Yes, no, I was one of the lucky ones that got a flight out on Sunday night. An awful lot of people didn't.
Flights cancelled. I saw lots of panicked people.
I heard, and 3 flights were cancelled out of Hamburg.
Yeah, I saw lots of people racing back for Burley. Sam, I know. You got home, Sam?
I got home eventually, slight delay, but back in my bed at 1 o'clock in the morning this morning, which is fantastic.
Worn out.
And I woke up then and went up to my mum and dad's house to see the boys, which is just a 200-meter walk away. And I was literally skipping my way there. Great to see them. 2 happy boys.
Yeah, I bet.
Family. So that was nice.
Tell Lucinda what you were doing today.
No. I castrated a bull today.
No, I can't claim to have done anything so exciting.
I had my hands were doing the work. I mean, it was a great education.
You mean you had a knife?
No, well, it was a bull calf now. He was 6 months old, and so you can do it in a very kind of, I suppose, as humane as one can do these things.
Yeah, quite.
I won't go into the details for listeners.
No, let's crack on with Lemoulin. It sounds even more exciting.
Okay, first thoughts. Let's jump straight to the cross country. Lucinda, you walked it. Before we go to what actually happened, how did it feel from a walking point of view before you went out there?
I thought it was a cracking good course, and I did have the cheek to say to Mike Eddington-Smith that I thought he'd put his big boys pants on. And I thought it was a really good course with plenty of questions, plenty of demand. I was a bit disappointed that there were 15. I think I counted. I might have got that wrong, brushes, because Mike's always saying, there shouldn't be more than X percent. And I think that must be much nearer 45%. And I think Mike was saying 20 not long ago. But I haven't really thought about that. But I thought it was a really good course, and I thought it would cause a lot more trouble. I was so impressed by the standard of riding in many, many cases and the level of horses. And when I found 20 inside the time, I thought, oh, God, I didn't anticipate that, but you probably all did.
No, 20 was definitely above what we thought.
I agreed. I agreed with you, Lucinda. I thought it was a cracking course, and that it would catch people. I thought his quantity of good questions is what would be the undoing. If you ask enough questions, then at some point, even the good riders are going to make a small blip.
A lot of brain ache for horses, isn't it?
Although to give him credit, I thought even though he used a lot of bend, there wasn't much that was straight in front of you. Unless it was a drop fence or a coffin or something with natural ground, which is good because then it brings in the footwork. So he was either asking you to control the shoulder, or he was asking the horse to find his balance and prick his ears and shuffle his legs and get to the fence, which all great stuff that I like. But I thought I was pushing it a little bit in terms of being optimistic, because I thought I was being quite bold in saying that 10 people could make the time because it's Lemulan, because it's a high class field, because a lot of good experts that I was talking to thought that less would make the time than 10. They thought it was really because it felt twisty and things. But I think this is what the short format is doing a little bit in that, you watch riders from Sweden, Italy. Yeah, obviously you have the French, the Brits, and the Germans who've always been very dominant at the Europeans. And then obviously the Irish were fantastic this weekend as well. Not won't go into myself, but my teammates were fantastic.
But
there's just a quantity.
You did all right.
No, exactly. Look, I was delighted with the horse, but it's the quantity of very good riders that can now ride very efficiently and really attack the courses. But it wasn't attacking course.
Let's not forget that Mike, exactly that, built long distances nearly everywhere, Michelet style, and you needed to go for it. If the water at the first water had been the depth that it should have been, and I know that deeper water is barely ever seen now, they wouldn't have got away with riding into that as fast as they did. But they'd had that very long minute and a something gallop through the wood, and they never really got their gear back despite the drop fence out of the wood before they came into the water, and they belted in there, and 4 long strides and over the whatever it was, and 3 long and over the skinny. And I'm thinking, God, if that water had been another foot deeper or whatever's legal, they wouldn't have had nearly such an easy time as if they hadn't pulled up. So that was one place where I think time I expected to be taken, and it wasn't. They then came absolutely brilliantly into the arena. I mean, galloping, almost every one of them. And they've learned, and this is one of the thrilling things, they've learned to put their horse in a balanced gallop and gallop to a fence. And they almost every one of them hit the table on the right stride, the first of those 4 in the arena. But you didn't see them pulling up and hooking and getting into a show jumping canter. They just balanced in a gallop and jumped the table and then turned and kept on coming to the other 2. It was 3 actually. It was a very impressive thing to see. But again, time it was easier. They kept sort of places where I thought they'd slow down, they didn't, and they were perfectly safe not doing it. And so what I'm thinking by the time I've studied the whole thing and thought, how did we get 20 inside the time on a course like that? I'm thinking maybe as a designer, you've got to follow a little bit more the dressage test, which asks for collection and extension and collection and extension, and not make every distance big and bold. Make some big and bold and make some not so big and bold. Because even the coffin, the thing in the trees on a straight line, was a fairly open stride out, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was actually a really enjoyable course to ride. And then
was it fun to ride? Oh, that's so good to hear.
It was it was a very long one stride at the last water. So probably the third time we were jumping into water with 2 angled hedges, which they were very long, and a lot of horses.
I reckon with 27 feet, which is a bloody long way with a drop into water.
Yeah.
It was as well that the rail was only just under 3 foot high, because a lot of them knelt on it.
And it was, again, I suppose in a probably an unintended way, it questioned a horse's footwork, particularly at a point in the course when they wanted to be quite long and strung out, that they were still able to be quick and agile. So, I think, as I say, unintentionally, maybe it was still calling on one of the other attributes that an event horse needs. And then what caught me out was that right angle. It was that sharp turn when we went into the water the final time, because my horse was he was brilliant from the start, and really pricking the ears and taking all those forward distances. And as you say, Lucinda, everything was attacking and positive, and that's how I rode it. And I had some time up my sleeve, and as I jumped in over that table into the water, I think he just was bounding on me. It really surprised me. I just couldn't turn, and ended up. I was having a dilemma, because obviously my head was thinking, we're in a medal position. We could go and win a medal here. I should just be jumping this bird on a wing and a prayer. But something deep down in my subconscious said, you don't do it. And I didn't present to it, and took a circle and took 20 penalties. And it ultimately cost me.
I've got to ask you a question that I know you won't mind answering, because you're the analytical type. You rode that again. What would you do differently?
I'd for sure get my eyes on the last fence a lot earlier, because I when I looked at myself, I was just a little bit taken by him sort of bounding on in a forward direction, and ended up having a conversation with him, rather than I always think if you have your eye on where you want to be, you will get there, and you feel the rest, rather than looking straight in front of you, as if you're trying to turn, is not the place to be looking. So that would be the first thing. But then to just be more aware earlier, as soon as I land, I needed to think, you're not just going to flow around this right angle turn, because it was very sharp, and I didn't give enough respect, I don't think, to how sharp that was going to ride. To how tight it was going to ride at that point in a course. And I think what I didn't factor in was that everything had been forward and flowing. Even where there was a curving line, it was forward. So in the main arena, there was a curve there, but it was really positive and forward, as nearly every combination had been. And I think he just thought, you land and go, because that's what we had done for 25 fences to that point. And I would just need to land and just say, "Oh, come on, we're turning." Just a split second quicker. And even just probably then, if I was to get really analytical about it, I would probably have tried to shorten the distance a little bit between the first two, to just to be a little steadier, even jumping the house, which was the fence before, just to already have the momentum a little bit quieter. But there we go. Live and learn. Learn.
You're right. But if you were Mike Evans and Smith, and you wanted to produce 3, 4, and 5 with time, what would you do?
I think we've got to do one of two things. Personally, it's we've either got to bring. We're halfway between speed and stamina, so we either need to put the same number of fences into an 8-minute track, which no one would want to do if they're thinking about long format. It's because then it's not long format anymore, and you're not testing stamina. Or we have to properly test stamina and go to, which is what you see it at a track like Badminton a little bit more, where it's you can ride quickly for 10 minutes, but it's when you start going to 12 and 13 minutes that stamina comes into play, which is what a lot of these modern horses don't have. So when we see the standard of dressage, which is so high, and the standard of jumping, these horses that have a lot of this European breeding, that they move and jump, they don't really lack speed, because it's, speed is power based. What they lack is much more is stamina, which is more from the thoroughbred. So that, but then I don't think then you start seeing tired horses and things like that. But it's a different. We're so conflicted between we're now all competing and breeding a horse that's for short format, and then we're trying to now we don't have long format in the sport. In my opinion, we've got semi long and short, And the short format is statistically far more difficult to make the time. You look, I was in the ERM at Mill Street, and it was incredibly tight. I mean, I was one of 3, I think, to make the time, and I only hit it bang on. Lucy Jackson won being 2 seconds over. She'd been 3 seconds over. She would have lost. It was because it's much more intense. But that is short format. And I think we have to make a clear differentiation in the sport between the two, because they're two different types of horses. A short format horse.
Was that 8 minutes, Mill Street?
No, it was only 6 and a bit, I think. Not much over 6. So it because, I mean, we jumped the first 3 fences in 27 seconds. I think it was, that's what most people were managing to do it in, and all out of a rhythm. And then we had a minute, a minute with no fence. We flew through that water complex, which was, it was 4 elements, ABC, or a single fence and then ABC. And that was all over quite quickly. And then we had another minute to get to the main arena with only 1 fence. And actually, it's we either need intensity or we need to up the speed, so we need to give the course designer we have this thing that we run the same speed, whether it's good ground, like Le Moulin, as in fast ground, like we had at Le Moulin, or whether it's soft ground like we had at Mill Street, and we will probably see as we come into the autumn a little bit more. And in racing, the times differ so much between soft ground and fast ground. It's a hugely significant factor. Yeah. And so I don't see any reason, and the evidence is there with 20 inside the time, why you couldn't be going at 600 meters per minute rather than 570. And to give the course designer maybe that option, because they can factor it into how they build the course. And then rather than having to take out parts of the course or take out loops, you could actually just reduce that. You could, if you pretty much know what weather conditions you're going to have before the competition starts on Wednesday, the trot up, and you could set the time to either be 570 meters per minute or 600 meters per minute. But there's no doubt that we are getting the riders and horses through the training, and with the professional approach that we're seeing in the sport. It's very much a professional sport these days with how we approach it, that the standard is getting very, very high. So we have to work out how we're going to test people in cross country with this high standard of rider. I
couldn't agree with you more. What I loved about Le Moulin was the flow, and it was lovely to hear you say what a fun ride it was, because a lot of courses, to try and stop happening what happened at Le Moulin, end up twisting the horses this way and that, and that isn't a good thing for their soundness or their morale, their mindset. So I thought this lovely flow was fantastic, and I'm sort of struggling to think what I would have done other than make the time, which you can't wheel it more tightly than he did, I'm sure. So you've got to change the speed, as you're saying. How do we think that we're ever going to get that one through the rules?
I mean, it's very difficult when it comes to the rule side. Myself and Sam have seen it reasonably up close, where there is just so many considerations that are coming in. And I think probably one of the biggest ones is the 2 different standards of riders. Sam, you've mentioned the elite riders pulling away, but I think one of the things which is probably more to the forefront in terms of rule making is not those guys, and that the rules aren't necessarily there to create excitement, but they're potentially to protect the ones coming through who are not at that standard. Yeah,
I would throw another thing out there in terms of bringing that excitement and influence of cross country into play. In that, obviously, one mistake, as I can testify to, and I'm still very much feeling, is that one small mistake on the cross country is very, very expensive. Unlike forgetting to set up for a shoulder in as you come off the corner, or potentially missing a flying change, or even in the show jumping, getting the stride wrong, or not quite getting the turn, which is going to cost you 4 penalties. There's what we have to look at in each phase is the variety of punishment is the wrong word, but how it impacts, how a mistake, how costly it is. And when with the team competition, the one thing, if you take a competition, we've just seen 2 championships, so WEG and then Le Moulin, where we're seeing quite high completion rates and more clears inside the time than what we ideally think we want to see, which I think most people in their head think sort of 5-10% is more than enough. And we're seeing a lot higher than that. But with the team element, the risk is accumulating. And I think as a spectator, the team competitions are getting incredibly exciting. You know, they were at WEG, it was very tight, and the Rio Olympics, it changed so much. The team medals, and here again in Le Moulin, the French looked like they could get a silver medal, and then they ended up dropping with one rail to no medal, and Sweden got the medal, and Britain looked like they were going to end up with a bronze medal, and then they got back to the silver medal. It was just chopping and changing quite a lot. So the team format is actually incredibly exciting, and that's where, you know, for example, Tina Cook's 20 penalties could have been very influential for Great Britain had that happened next year at Tokyo, because I think she probably would have been one of the three. So I don't know if that's one of the ways that we sort of, without having to be too punishing on the horses, perhaps, that we make cross country more influential. But it's definitely something that I think we need to think about.
Will that happen? Will that happen naturally with the three in a team?
It will. Yeah, it will. Because
It's just having more team. I mean, for me, more team competitions or more meaning to the team competitions. I think the Nations Cup this year has, you know, we've really illustrated what the Nations Cup probably could be with every nation traveling to every leg and great coverage of that Nations Cup all across the year. And it's meant something. It's been so exciting all the way through. I think the next challenge for us is to make the 2020 or the 2021 Nations Cup match this year, and it's a big question mark as to how we do that.
Well, do you think that the teams of four are all to count, and you follow on with that Tokyo line, but make all four to count in the next year?
Yeah, I think what the three in a team is going to do in Tokyo is that, although we've just seen the standard in Europe, probably the highest standard that we've ever seen in terms of cross-country riding. I thought the Swedish and the Italians in particular were fantastic on cross-country day. They all had 4 clear rounds on cross-country, so all their team members putting very good scores on the board.
Victoria had a couple of problems there, didn't she?
Sorry,
technical problems like flags down and rails down rather than.
Yeah, I think she was on a low 40. I think she just got the French. Well, I'll double check it, but
I think she got it may have changed. It was as she finished, it was a flag and a rail drop, an 11 and a 15, 26.
The 15 went, so she finished with an 11. She was inside the time, but she got an 11.
Good.
But she was on 42.5, which is not a terrible score by any means.
Not at all.
And that was the discard score for the Italians after cross country. So
I wonder if it would put more emphasis on the cross country, which there wasn't enough of this time. If all four members counted, would I don't know. You guys have that sort of brain. Would it make that sort of difference that we're looking for to get away from the combined training, dressage, show dumping? Ruling the roost. How do we get cross country and its speed to rule the roost more?
Well, it would, wouldn't it? I mean, the Germans would have had to. Kai Ruder's time penalties were an anomaly in that the horse was didn't want to leave the start box, but you would have had Tina's 20 counting. But
you would have had Tina's 20 for GB. Would have had your 20 for Ireland, or Kieran Glynn not presenting on Sunday equally.
And that becomes 1,000, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you would have had the same for France. So Alexis Goury didn't. Had to withdraw also on Sunday morning. So you would have had the same for France. So now Ireland, France, Germany. Oh no, not Germany. Ireland, France, Britain.
Interesting to put that through your grinder and see what comes out if all four counted in the whole way down. But anyhow, what we were trying to find was a way of making the cross country as grand a course as we all felt it was. I think we're all in agreement that Mike did a brilliant job, but we were all staggered. Well, some people weren't. They said they expected it, but most of us were staggered that so many made it inside the time. And we've got to adjust this somehow without turning and twisting and stretching a few more suspensory ligaments. Is one of the ways on the team competition might easily be to count everybody, but how's the individual going to not all pile into best dressage?
Sam, can I ask you how it compared to Malmo? Because from a numbers point of view, they look very comparable. And I think the other thing that we have to be very careful about is not being too reactionary, not changing based on one or two competitions. I think it's a valid point now because we've had WEG and the European Championships back to back where the element of time hasn't played the role that, that eventing would like, that piece, that cross-country time piece. We've now had it both. But Sam, from a European's point of view, we tend to see much lower jumping clear rates. It's not that long ago since Pratoni where we had just 34% of the field actually jump clear, and pretty much nobody made the time. I think like one person made the time.
Which Pratoni was that? Sorry,
that was 07. That would have been Gallon de Sauvier when Nicholas Touzon won Pratoni.
That was a cracking good course on absolutely rock solid hard ground. Barely a whisper of grass on it, and it was like the old days, and there wasn't much done to it. And whether that stopped them going so fast, it was also quite undulating. I mean, there were some quite steep hills, and ran away down a sort of huge hill and ran out of the skinny at the bottom of it. There was quite a lot more undulations in there.
Well, I think Lucinda's actually hit the nail on the head as to what the answer is, because when you asked the question about Malmo, Derm, there's two things. The surprise a little bit in that people were, again, some fairly expert people. I remember talking to them the night before cross country, and they were thinking, could even 5 people make the time? And then obviously being very surprised because, again, nearly about 20 did. What the two courses have in common is that they were you were able to attack every fence. You didn't really need to set up and change gear down too much. So even where we had, like Lucinda said about the ditch rail, which we call a coffin fence in Lemulin, those water fences in Lemulin as well, none of them were really get back on your hocks and be brave, but be patient, have all the balance on your back legs here and really get your shoulders up. It was, you could just really attack. So I think the answer would actually be in those SAP trackers. If you were to look at people's variance in speed, I think they were able to not have to deviate very far from the 570. So they didn't have to gallop too fast and they didn't have to slow down too much. Whereas if you look at an Eric Winter badminton course, he makes you do an awful lot of gear changes, and those gear changes do two things. They slow down your speed and therefore make the time more challenging, but they also use up energy, which again starts to bring the stamina into play earlier in the course. So if we were to, and I really want to do this because I hate being surprised by courses. Again, I was trying to be bold and say that I thought 10 would be inside the time, and that was me analyzing the quality of competitors there. I could anticipate that. I knew it was a high quality field, and I knew it was good ground, and it was Lemulin, and I put all that together and said, no, I still think we're going to get 10, even though it's a good course. To get 20, I was caught off guard a little bit, and I don't like that. So I think you need to start analyzing when we're walking these courses, analyze them a different way. And I think if you were to ask yourself, even with the double of gates, how much do you need to slow down for these? He gave us he used the terrain quite nicely, that the first gate actually had a really nice profile that you didn't have to slow down too much for it. And as Lucinda says, we've all learned to put our horses in the right balance, but still keeping the pace up. So we're doing it safely. It's not reckless, but we're able to attack them. And the profile of the fences that Mike used was quite similar to what we saw in Malmo, where everything had quite a nice shape to it, that we could just really keep rocking on down to those fences and not have to gear change and slow down too much.
Lucinda, what was Lemulin like for your European wins? You you had success at
Well,
Llewellyn?
it was so difficult. I know that sounds, because I'm old, things shrink. But it was way longer. I think we were 13 minutes and we went right up onto some high ground, very, very hard ground, and through woods. And we had some mammoth steps down, which you very rarely see. You very rarely see quarries these days. You very rarely see big steps down to something at the bottom. And that was before the days of skinnies. It was a very much a speed and endurance test. Wolfgang felt was like Tommy Brennan. He had this incredible artistic flair to make signature fences all over the heat. And every fence was telling a story like Tommy Brennan did at Punchestown. And that isn't really making the course more difficult or more worrying for the horses. Because that sort of thought, in some fascinating way, develops, makes the course more difficult. I mean, Tommy's was brilliant, wasn't it, at Punchestown?
Oh, they were iconic. Yeah, no, Tommy's courses were, and I still, when I'm watching the racing at Punchestown, I still look into the middle of that race course and wish that we could get an international back there. It's amazing. It's a lovely.
But I do think that the track I'm trying to prescribe is that because of all these extraordinary imaginative course designers with their theme fences, we jump every sort of funny shaped thing, which now, quite honestly, you're down to 5, a basis of 5 fences that have the same shape. How many fences at Le Moulin had heather along the bottom and were like a house? We're banished to 5 fences. And the most disappointing thing I found was the World Games in Harry-du-Pin, when there wasn't one single natural fence. And yet we crossed from field to field across hedge lines, but we never had a natural fence. We had one of the 5. And I understand that we're up against it. We've got to be able to move fences. And I took a photograph of where you all lunged, if you wanted to, in Le Moulin, around a pile of a sort of 25, 30 foot high pile of cross-country fences. I took a photograph of this little circle of cross-country fences piled up. And I just sent it home and just wrote at the bottom, modern eventing. It's all these fences that you can move, and therefore, per se, they are very similar profiles. And the horses know these, and they jump them and they gallop at them, which wouldn't have been possible in 1982 in the World Games that Wolfgang Feld put on. You had so many more interesting fences, interesting combinations.
It is interesting. We things like road crossings and stone walls and things like that there, where you wouldn't, again, you were literally just crossing across farms, crossing the country as they were put there. So there wasn't always a perfect distance. So you might have to. An interesting example actually is at the 5-star at Le Moulin this year. Mike had his 2 gates that he had from the Europeans, but he had them on the flat before the main arena, on a turn there. And because he felt he didn't have any real sort of natural, whether it be a road crossing type thing where people would have to sort of slow down a little bit and get the horses on their hocks, he built those gates on about a 12-yard distance, which show jumping would be fine for 2 strides, but cross country was probably a little bit, was a bit on the tight side. And he said, well, look, I just want people to come off the turn and actually just be able to woe their horses a little bit and kill, take the edge off the speed and get them to be careful and pop through those 2 gates. That's what I want people to do.
And it worked?
He had so many complaints that the distance was too short that they ended up moving. They ended up adding
12 yards too short.
It was maybe it was 11 and a half, but it wasn't. It was, it was a show jumping distance rather.
You see, this is where I think people have gone so wrong, in that they give in to what you do if you've got an 11-yard distance or a 10.5-yard distance is you go slower and you get a time fault, and hooray, we don't get 20 inside the time. Fascinating to hear you say that, and to hear that the riders were given into. Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, but I suppose the course designer is in a difficult position sometimes in that, because obviously it started with the riders and then it's followed up with, by other people as well. But he was disappointed. He sort of had to begrudgingly say, "Okay, you have an extra yard," because there's enough noise, and it's quite hard. It's quite hard in this sport to be the one person that sort of stands alone. I could see.
Could we have Frank Weldon back again? Because he wouldn't have given a stuff. But I know we live in a totally, totally different era of public opinion ruling everything.
But it isn't, that if that's what the riders want to ride forward and keep it going. But I agree with you, Liz. I agreed with him that actually that's what we train to be able to do those transitions and
that's what the dressage does for us. I can't believe that a normal cross-country rider doesn't understand that 11 yards is fine. You just have to break the rhythm and go into coffin canter. I'm fascinated to hear you say that. I really am. Thanks for that. I hadn't heard that.
Guys, before I let you both go, can we have a word on some individual rounds at the championship that you may remember?
Can I take Michael Young and Fisher Chipmunk?
You can take them.
I tell you, that was... We have never really seen Michael ride because those two horses that he has ridden at the top end of the game and one on are just such an extension of his brain because of the way he's trained them since they were 5 and 4, I think. So to find him on Fisher Chipmunk, who's clearly an incredibly talented horse, who's been very well trained, but trained to another set of buttons, and he had to go out and ride. It was the most wonderful exposition of just sheer riding. The jump into the second water, when I think he may have stumbled, is a very powerful horse, isn't he? So he does some quite, Michael, mind you, has often been seen to stumble when he jumped Sam into badminton and Sam again into the World Games water. There was some stumbling going on. Anyhow, it went on, something happened that he had to let even more rain out. And he had his hands apart, coming to what was probably only 4 strides for that skinny. And he knew he was on too long a rein. And he couldn't put his hands together to shorten the reins. And as he was going in those last 3 strides for the skinny, his hands crawled up the reins in the most fascinating way. And they ended up with the one hand with the thumb facing towards the bit and the other hand the other way. And then once he'd done that skinny, he then had time to put his hands together and shorten his reins to the next skinny. But it was just magic to watch this man at work when things were going a little bit wrong. I just loved it.
I'm going to take my teammates. I thought Kieran Glynn to kick us off with the first clear inside the time of the day. That was fantastic on a personal note, but just again seeing him, I get to see his talent and in training. And everything, but I thought for everyone else to get to see what he's able to produce was fantastic. I thought Sarah Ennis produced the best round that she has on Woodcourt Garrison, and that's a combination that's still quite young and inexperienced. This was definitely their biggest question, and again, she just looked the smoothest I've really seen her in a long time, and really assured and confident. But the main man was...
Has anything happened to bring her on in such? She's always been a very, very good rider, in my opinion. But has something happened to get her clicked into that sync with that horse? She's fairly young still.
It's a good question, Lucinda. I mean, we have been... The thing is, we train cross country far more regularly now. Since Sally Corscadden took over the reins, she saw that we hadn't been delivering in this phase at championships despite our reputation. So we've had a number of real top cross country people come over, and I think that helps and that settles in. But Sarah, that in 2 consecutive weekends, I thought to bring Horseware Stella Reband back to Mill Street in the Event Rider Masters, that was his first event since the World Games. She didn't even do a 1-day event, and she went straight out and produced again probably the smoothest, nicest round that I've ever seen with him as well. So she's just in a good place, and things are really clicking into place for her. She's delivered 2 really, really lovely rounds. And then the absolute main man and so exciting for Ireland really to have this, and an incredible story was Cathal Daniels with Rogan Rua. They were obviously part of the WEG team from last year that won the silver medal, and he won Bramham this year. He was top 10 at Lamoulan last year. But this partnership, they won the junior medal when the mare was 6, and she's now 12, and they've won individual medals at every level. And for the top three to be Ingrid Klimke, Michael Young, and now Cathal Daniels is just it's top class, and it's a sign of, I think this man is a superstar. I think we've had William Fox Pitts and Andrew Nicholson's and Sir Mark Todd's and Michael Young's. I think this man has just got a huge future ahead of him.
How exciting! Goodness me.
If both of you are taking those, does that leave me with Ingrid?
That leaves you with Ingrid.
That's the way I like it, Lucinda. I mean, yes, with Ingrid, but in particular, I think SFE Hale Bobby, just deserves huge credit. I think there was a doubt put over his jumping, and potentially rightly so, not his cross country, but his show jumping. And in that pressure cooker on that final day, one rail would have been expensive. Now, as things turned out, they would have had the room for a rail, but I guess, I was looking into this in some depth over the weekend while you guys were over there. Going from Po 2014 up until Badminton 2017, he knocked one rail over, 15 or so combinations or competitions. And then since that Badminton round, he has had seven. I think he's 7 from 14 in terms of jumping clear. And like Wiesbaden was bad this year, so 3 down at Wiesbaden. So that was really the only place where I saw any vulnerability. We know how good they are in the first phase. We know that they're consistently jumping clear. I think the last time they had a 20 penalties was that 20 penalties at Aachen, when again they were on a 22.1 dressage. And I think that's their only 20 penalties, again going back as far as the Olympics, that famous one at Rio. So, incredible cross country, incredible at getting the time as well as that first phase. And when you put both of those together, they're almost always going to be there jumping. And then for me, it makes every rail a higher profile. So there won't be many people who will have, plenty of people will have knocked rails at Badminton, but few will have done it in the profile that Ingrid did it. Again, the final fence falling at Weg, remembered, but only because she had put herself into that position. I think to go in there this weekend and jump clear under that pressure and, be only the second horse to retain European Championships. I think Pippa Funnell and Supreme Rock 99.01 is the only other horse that in the whatever since like 1953 that any horse has ever gone back and retained it. So I think very special for Bobby fans, but also very special for Ingrid that pair have managed to pull that off. Delighted
to watch that unbelievably disciplined body of hers with the tremendous flair. Being old enough to remember when she first appeared on the scene, she was a lunatic, and she would ride in a forward seat very fast. And if she didn't fall off, she did quite well. Quite a lot of the French used to be like that until Touzin came along and sorted them all out. And it's so wonderful, and that's what I so lovely about the sport. So many people that have got, she's 51 now, have got to the top of the tree. Were not very good when they started, and there's just so much margin to improve and get better. And the atmosphere that you compete in is I think, very proactive to helping each other. And I think it really it's paid off again and again, because most of these really good ones have got to some age. And Cathal started really good at 16. So it'll be fascinating to see how that one develops. Like Nikki Young started very good, very young too. But a lot of the others weren't. And Ingrid was one of them.
What I love about Hale Bob, Derm, is like 3 of his first 6 internationals, they were obviously back in the day when we didn't have a dressage multiplier, but the dressage tests were in the 50s, so they were closer to 65% than 75%, which is now his probably a bad day for him, is a 75%, usually much closer to 80%. It's an example of Ingrid's training. She very much does what the sport is designed to do, which is she takes a horse that's designed to gallop and jump, and she teaches them how to do dressage. And I think an awful lot of the new generation of the sport, they take a horse that's bred for dressage and jumping, and then they try and get them fit enough to go cross country, and it's a little bit the wrong way around, I think, a lot. But Michael and Ingrid, I think they truly understand the test and they execute it brilliantly in it, and I love seeing those two being successful in the sport, because for me they're a great example and a great role model. But the soundness of Hale Bob as well. Like, Dim, you talk about his first, he won that 5-star in Po in 2014. That's nearly 6 years, 6 seasons at the top level.
And he's been there every season. You think of all of the big championships, he was at, but and he goes to the big events really now. And you look at, what was it you mentioned, 2014, that Po, he went to Le Moulin podium 2015, badminton podium 2015, Aachen podium 2015, again Aachen podium 2016, Le Moulin win 2017. I could go on, but I'd bore you all to tears. But wins Aachen again 2017. Big horse for the big day. And I think a couple of high profile mistakes have people thinking slightly, people don't necessarily put him. I don't know, what do you guys think? I feel he doesn't necessarily get put alongside, he can't be put alongside Sam, but I think he probably deserves a place, or certainly a conversation as behind Sam. I know you'll probably go for Nereo, Sam, am I right?
I don't know. Different horses. I mean, his two. He's very, very clinical. So to win those two Europeans in Strigom and now Le Moulin, he's a horse who he would have beaten Sam. He could beat Sam at a European Championships for sure, and he could probably beat him in a few places head to head. I think at Aachen and tracks like that. But I just think Sam for me is perfection in that when you look at his outlook going around that badminton in, I think 2017, it was the year after Rio, when it was again a really tough time, even though the conditions were optimal, but his ears were pricked the whole time. When other horses started to find it hard work, he was just skipping around and loving it, and his consistency at those big events as well.
I agree. That was Nereo's badminton.
Correct.
But yeah, Sam is out on top. So look, they're the big three. That was the podium. A word, Sam or Lucinda, on King de Brio and Thibaut Villette, because that would have been as disappointed as you were, pal. One rail cost team and individual medal in that case, very late in the day.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is it now. I mean, this is, we used to sometimes go show jumping on the last day, and an awful lot had been decided. There was, and okay, maybe from a German point of view, the gold medal was fairly well decided, even on Sunday morning before we went show jumping. But certainly the team silver and bronze medals were wide open, and I really felt for Thibaut. King de Brio jumped exceptionally. It was just one of those things that happens. It was I'd have to watch their round back, but at the time I remember thinking, I mean, obviously we were sort of celebrating in our camp because it meant Cahill had climbed another place, and I think actually meant Cahill had won a medal, so we were absolutely celebrating at that point. Sorry, Thibaut, but look, the horse jumped very well, and that's the sport though. That is now, that's what happens. Show jumping day is not the hangover day where you just sort of get through and just finish it off after most of the work being done. It's a day where absolutely the margins remain extremely tight, and there's a huge job to do, and medals will change hands on that last day for sure.
Exciting. Lucinda, anything else? Were you happy generally?
No, I would like to say thank you for you two for what you do for the sport. It's amazing. Amazing forever. Well done, you guys.
You are wonderful as always. Thank you for coming on and for giving us the time. It's always much appreciated. And Sam, thank you for coming on. I'm sure you're exhausted, and yeah, much appreciated coming on and telling us all about the weekend. I will talk to both of you soon. For now, it is back to the studio and back to Nicole.
Now, next up, I'm very happy to say we have a lady who we actually had on the Eventing podcast pre-European Championships in our Fairfax Saddles special, and she absolutely nailed it this weekend, finishing best of the Brits. Congratulations, Kitty King.
Oh, thank you very much. It was a brilliant week, and really pleased to have him home and happy and in his field enjoying the grass. So, great week.
And we have to really say thank you for coming on to record this with us, because we're recording this Monday late afternoon and you literally drove through the night from Lucinda and have got on horses, ridden all day, and then you've jumped on to talk to us. So thank you, because I imagine you're feeling fairly low on the old adrenaline levels right now.
Little bit tired. Could do with some matchsticks for my eyes, I think, but otherwise we're all good. And it's always so much easier driving home on a long journey when you've had a really good week and a good result, and you're really happy with your pony in the back. So it was a much shorter journey coming home because he went so well.
It could have been. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, he finished in eventual 7th place at 27.9 in the dressage, just a few seconds over the time cross country, so 2.4 penalties to add, and that was all he added. So he finished on 30.3 inside the top 10 and actually best of the Brits, as I say. So pretty happy with that, I very much imagine.
Oh, I'm absolutely delighted with his performance. A little bit annoyed with myself for being a little bit slow, but as a kind of competitive rider, you're always looking at what you could improve, what you could have done better, because he was so close to actually being on the podium. When you look at the scores, it was so tight. Had a little break in the medium trot, which cost us 2 marks because you've got marked down for the extended and then also the transition. So that was a really expensive mistake to make, and it was one of his highlights, but he was just trying nearly a little bit too hard in the dressage for me, and kind of was just really keen to please me, and just popped into canter, which was a real shame, but otherwise he was wonderful. And then cross country, he gave me a brilliant ride, and I just got a little bit kind of protective towards the end because there was a few fences I was a little bit worried about for him and at his stage in his career, and probably just wasted a little bit of time. So any one of those things, if we'd just got those right, he could have been on the podium, which is really exciting to know for the future. And he was incredible all week.
I was going to say, that's actually, while I appreciate really frustrating because you kind of think a little bit what could have been, the fact that you can sort of spot those marginal gains and they're things that you can kind of build on for the future. I mean, he's only a 10-year-old, so he is in his first championship. That must actually make that performance even more exciting, because he has had the most incredible season in 2019. He won at advanced level, I think it was earlier this year. He obviously won Bramham, he won Bergam. Then to go to be 7th at Lucinda, he is just getting better and better.
He's just improved year on year, really. And, he had a few blips last year where we were just, still just finding his feet at kind of 4-star level and just being a little bit of a green horse. But he's come out this year so strong, so much quicker with his footwork, and he's improving all the time with his dressage. And I mean, he couldn't have been more on it cross country. Every single picture that people tagged me in,
awesome.
He's just got his ears pricked, looking for where he's going next, and really on the job, and not leaving a brain cell somewhere else, which sometimes in the past could happen. He just lacked a little bit of concentration, but there was no hint of that at all at Lucinda, or really this year. The only time he went a little bit green was at badminton, but he was 10, and it was probably a little bit too soon for him in retrospect, but hindsight's a great thing. And to be fair, it didn't do any harm. If anything, it actually brought him on, because he came out of Bramham having learnt from those mistakes. So it kind of did him good in a funny way, and he's not looked back.
And he didn't put any cheeky box in Lucinda, which we were talking about on the preview podcast when we spoke to you pre-Lucinda. He is known as a bit of a character and can put in a little cheeky moment here and there, but he was on best behaviour all week.
Oh, he was on perfect behaviour all week, and that was quite a nice relief for me, and it meant it was really easy to make my plans for the dressage and work out my warm-ups really well for him. So it was great. He was just so on side.
Well, it absolutely worked. Talk us a little bit through the week, because you were actually an individual for Team GB. Did you know that was the plan pre-Lamoulan, or when did you find out this week, or last week, I should say, going into the start of the competition?
I mean, I had a pretty good idea that, I would most likely be an individual because he's a young horse. He hasn't got the kind of 5-star experience like the team horses do. But I knew that we kind of wouldn't really know for certain until all the horses had travelled out there and, we'd seen how they all kind of come out of the journey. So, it was something I was, fairly sure I was going to be an individual, but until we actually got out there, it wasn't certain.
And how was it in terms of the competition in walking the course? What were your first impressions of it? It caused plenty of problems. I mean, the time was achievable, and the first few team riders out on course made it look perhaps fairly straightforward, when actually it really did shake up that leaderboard. And there were a couple of really high profile problems on course as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I walked the course, I was quite relieved I'd actually been the year before with Sailor Lan, although he went in the other direction, because it is such a kind of twisty place and you're always in the woods. Last year, I never really felt I knew where I was going around the track, whereas this year I had much more of a sense of when I was walking the course, and you kind of knew where you were a little bit more.
Yeah.
You had a bit more familiarity with it. So that was a real help. But, I walked the track and I thought, there were plenty of really decent questions. I mean, the first water, I don't think really caused any trouble, but when you walked it, you had nearly a minute of galloping through the woods, and then you suddenly kind of thought you'll be coming out to all these crowds and pretty big. I think it's nearly a maximum drop in to that first water, and it's quite an eye opener. And I thought it would have caused a little bit more trouble than it did, but I think on the whole, the horses jumped very well through there. And, the second water with the double of arrowheads, I thought was a really good question and pretty tough. And equally, the corners in the arena, they had a very similar question in the 5-star there last year, and that caused, a lot of trouble, including, Tim Lips, missing a flag.
That was the flag controversy, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was a very similar question to last year, but it seemed to ride, very well, and I was kind of surprised how well the course did ride on the whole, because I thought it was a really tough championship track with plenty of questions.
And that's probably indicative of the fact that it was a really, really quality field. We saw the Germans were always going to be really hard to beat, and that actually proved the case. It was a happy Hellbob day. Durham was delighted because it became only the second horse in history to win back-to-back European titles. Obviously winning in Stragom a couple of years ago and winning again here with a world individual bronze in the middle. The Brits would be, I think, on the whole, pretty pleased with a silver medal. But I think, again, there's kind of that, actually, there's little room for improvement in order to push the Germans to the very, very max going into Tokyo next year.
Yeah, no, I think there are obviously, a few mistakes here and there, which, kind of let the general team score down. But I think, we were delighted that we kind of clinched the silver, because at one point even that was looking a little bit dicey. But there's things we need to improve on to be able to beat the Germans, because they're so strong. And as competitors, obviously you're disappointed not to win the team gold, but equally I think the team are pretty satisfied with the silver. But there's work to be done before next year, and we've got to keep kind of striving to improve and, be kind of fault free and not make errors, which is so difficult in the sport.
It is, and it's an exciting team of really talented young horses going through. Can I ask, I know you've literally just got home, you've driven through the night, Froggy is out having a nice roll in the field. Can I ask if you're even thinking of the T word for next year?
He was incredible this week, and I haven't really made any plans yet, but certainly as a rider, Tokyo is always in the back of your mind. It's something you're always striving to do, is get onto that Olympic team, and I really want to make amends for Rio, so it would be a dream to be able to go out to Tokyo and be part of the part of the team for the Olympics, but it's a long way off, particularly in horse terms. Anything could happen. But, he did his chances no harm this week, and, hopefully showed everyone that he, is a real future championship horse and can kind of cope with the added kind of atmosphere and occasion, and he didn't let himself down at all, so hopefully he's done himself no harm.
I think you both did yourselves proud this week. I think that is very, very fair to say. Now, obviously he's going to have a holiday. You're going to go and concentrate on winning another medal in Le Lion with Crystal Fontaine, who we spoke about on the preview podcast as well. Can I just ask though, because Spike announced that he was going, I think I say announced, he actually was backed into a corner, but he's going to bake you a pie or cook you a pie in celebration of the Europeans. Now, do you have any requests? Can we put in a pie request for him, or are you giving him free reign?
Well, I don't know. Free reign might be dangerous.
It could be. He has been looking at his cookbooks already.
But I do like a chicken pie of some sort, any sort of chicken pie. But to be fair, free reign surprise might be.
Okay,
that would be quite cool. Yeah,
well, we'll give him the chicken hint, Spike. There you go. There's your chicken hint. But in the meantime, I take it you'll be off for pie night to celebrate at the pub?
I have texted the group, and I think there's a few of us going tomorrow, so that will be...
We'd expect nothing less.
Be good fun, and early night tonight, and then we can go to pies tomorrow.
Go and celebrate. Kitty, congratulations, best of the Brits in Le Moulin. Absolutely delighted for you. We have loved being a little part of the journey as well, and we hope that we'll have you back on again, maybe to talk about the T word next year.
That would be exciting.
It would be. And in the meantime, we will give you listeners pie updates very, very soon. So stay tuned for those. Kitty, thank you. Go and enjoy a nice break and relax following the trip back from Le Moulin. Thank you very much. And we'll look forward to following your progress for the rest of the year.
Thanks very much.
Oh, damn. What an enjoyable weekend we have had at the Europeans. It feels like things to Tokyo are really ramping up now, and it is almost like countdown is on. The T word is the big word.
Yeah, the T word is the big word. Correct, Nicole. All roads lead to Tokyo. From here, it just got the excitement. It got the excitement going again. Team eventing for me, there is nothing quite like it. Yeah, all the nations out, all of the medals, Ireland medal, happy Hail Bob Day. I mean, that for me, that championship had everything. It had great excitement. It had great dressage. Maybe there was certainly the time, probably cross country. Could have been maybe a little bit more exciting, but
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. For me, 20 combinations dumping clear inside the time at a championship is too many.
Well, we had thought at WEG as well. We've had 2 championships in a row now.
But I think that's what you get actually when you talk about the team format. That brings a whole new level, and it will bring an even bigger level when you come to Tokyo, because you're requiring those 3 team horses really to be in with a chance of a team medal to jump clear. So 3 jumping clear, there's no room for error. And I think again that comes down to the pressure cooker environment, because there is no kind of mistakes. You can't have somebody that is a bit of a risk. You have to be able to go all in. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to seeing who gets that final team slot. Can I ask for a quick prediction? Who's going to get the team slot for you?
I think it'll be. I'll say the Belgians make a comeback in the Nations Cup. They do well at Warragam, and they're. It's a big stretch.
I'm actually going to say the Dutch should, on home soil, finish the job in Buccleuch. I think they'll be really disappointed if they don't. And I think, they're the ones to beat here. But watch this space, because it is very nearly complete. Your teams for Tokyo are very nearly finalised. And who will it be? Tune in. We'll keep you updated on the eventing podcast throughout the next few weeks, of course, as we head into Bergamo and to Buccleuch at the beginning of October. Damn, it's been a pleasure. Hats off to you, because you have done a brilliant job through ECHA Ratings.
Good weekend. But we missed you, so don't ever leave again.
I know. I'm sorry. I do you know what? We don't go on holiday very often. I know. And my husband is very, very long suffering at the best of times. So, I'll give him this.
I agree. Holidays are good and necessary.
So we've thoroughly enjoyed it. We hope you've enjoyed it as well. And we'll be back very soon with another episode of the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast. Thank you for listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast. This podcast is available for free on iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Addict, or wherever you usually listen to your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Find us at eventingpodcast.com or search Eventing Podcast on social media.